Welcome to another episode of the Box Office Breakdown. I'm Garret and Neal, introducing us here as we listen to the beautiful tones of Celine Dion singing the anthem from Deadpool 2, Ashes. Still, not gonna top My Heart Will Go On, because that song is amazing! So sorry, but it's always good to hear some Celine, as far as I'm concerned. Definitely going to be talking about Deadpool 2 this week, as always. Just in case you haven't listened to the show before, we're going to start out with what happened this last weekend, the 18th through the 20th, in the domestic box office, with some touches as far as worldwide goes. And then we'll take a quick break, and we'll come back looking at what's coming up this week. Only got one wide release film this week, and you probably already know what it is. But still, for those of you that don't, now you have to watch to the end to find out. So, without further ado, Celine, sorry, your voice is beautiful, but you're going to have to go away there just so you guys can listen to me. Am I right? Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. But Celine has a better voice than me. But please, you can listen to that song whenever you want to. But this show is live only right now, and if you don't listen to it, then you'll miss it forever, kind of. But not really, because I have a recording that I can share. But anyway, let's go into this week's box office. And as I mentioned, Deadpool 2 opened last week, and of course, got the expected number one spot, bringing in $125.5 million over the 3-day, which actually isn't quite probably what they were hoping. I mean, it was projected to get around the 30s. I actually thought, considering all the positive buzz around it, that it might do a little bit better than that, but didn't quite do it. It did still set a few records, depending on just getting a little picky, because, hey, records are fun to talk about, but it did get the biggest Thursday preview showing numbers for any rated R film, with 18.6 million on that Thursday night. Then it had the biggest opening day with 53.3 million on Friday. So that's the biggest opening day for a rated R film. But it ended up coming in second as far as opening weekend for a rated R film, of course losing to the first Deadpool film, which had 132 million that opening weekend, but just edging out it, that had 123.4 its opening weekend late last year. Yeah, I need to see that again. That was a good movie. And it also is the second largest Fox opening, of course, also behind the first Deadpool. So still doing very well. I don't think the Fox is going to be super disappointed there, but it was projected to do a little more, and I'm surprised that with the positive buzz around it, it wasn't able to do a little bit better. Of course, reviews started coming out like the day after the show last week, so we didn't have kind of the rundown there, so I'll go through those really quick. Had a 66 Metascore, 8.2 on IMDb, 83% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes, or 83% critic rating, 86 audience rating. So all across the board, very good reception. I certainly enjoyed it personally. I liked the first one a little bit more, but some people like the second one a little bit more, because it does try and hit a little bit some more emotional notes. They didn't quite connect for me, but I know they did for some other people. Regardless, even it still, I think, is overall a pretty enjoyable film, though clearly not everyone will like it, because opinions are subjective. Moving on, number 2, not to be forgotten, Infinity War, dropping 52% in week 4, which honestly, I don't know. I haven't done a huge deep dive here, but I mean, just looking at the other drops for Infinity War, it dropped 55% going from week 1 into week 2, and then 45% going from week 2 to week 3. So 52 maybe a little bit bigger than it would have been had Deadpool 2 not come out, but I think Infinity War was honestly just as much a factor for Deadpool not making as much money as Deadpool was for Infinity War, maybe not having a slightly larger fourth weekend. So interesting, see how those two play against each other going forward, and of course they will have more big competition coming up this weekend. Infinity War is still stuck in that 8th spot overall, domestic wise, and 4th largest global release of all time. It brought in another 84.4 million. So for those keeping track at home, its total worldwide gross is $1.22 billion. Or that's its overseas. So total, it's 1.81 billion worldwide, which puts it fourth on the all-time worldwide grossing list. But if we're just looking at overseas, it's third because, of course, Force Awakens, which, taking into account everything, is number 1. But it didn't do super hot overseas. Only made about 55% of its total gross overseas. Its total gross was $2.06 billion, and it made $936 million domestic and $1.1 million worldwide, or not worldwide, overseas. Whereas Infinity War has made 67% of its total gross overseas at that 1.22 million that we talked about just a second ago. So that's why I was able to kind of bump up the list. Furious 7 actually made more money overseas than Force Awakens did. Force Awakens is 5th on the all-time overseas gross list, but of course is still not number 1. It's number 3. Why did I say number 1 earlier? I should be ashamed of myself. Force Awakens is number 3 on the all-time worldwide gross, because of course worldwide is overseas and domestic combined. I just want to make sure everything's clear, because I'm throwing out a lot of stuff. I'm getting confused, so I'm trying to make sure everyone at home can keep it straight as well. Of course, number 1 is Avatar at 2.7 million, and number 2 is Titanic. Speaking of Celine Dion, shout out. 2.2 billion, and Force Awakens number 3 at 2.06 billion. Infinity War, it's got like 200 million to go to get to that 2 billion club, be the 4th movie ever to worldwide reach 2 billion. It's gonna be a long race to see if it gets there. We'll have to see how well it holds. Because again, that's what made Titanic and Avatar so amazing, is that they held incredibly well, and they just stayed in theaters and did so well for so long. And that's what Black Panther has done here in the U.S., even though not as much globally. Yeah, I don't like why. Still talking about Infinity War way more than we should be. Of course, we should be talking about the number 3 movie from this past weekend, Book Club. Who can forget that classic? Really hit its target demographic. I don't usually do the gender breakdowns that Box Office Mojo does, but it was 80% female, 60% over the age of 50. So that's hitting that target demo right there, and that target demo brought in 13.5 million, just about in line with projections that we had from last week. So way to go for that one, and it's tracking right along the lines of Going in Style. If you missed that one from last summer, Morgan Freeman. Oh my gosh! Oh, Men in Black. Why can't I remember? Tommy Lee Jones. Whew, that was a close one. It's comparing pretty much to that one. So that projects it to get around 40 million domestically at the end of its run, which is certainly very solid for I think what the expectations are for that film. Coming in at number 4, we got a week 2 film, Life of the Party. Melissa McCarthy dropped 57.5% in week 2. Yikes! Certainly the poor reviews not helping that one out there, and of course Deadpool 2 isn't going to help either. Brought in 7.6 million this weekend, and yeah, it was already Melissa McCarthy's worst opening weekend. I think as far as her playing like the lead character, so not her best run. But you know, saw the trailer for the Happy Time Murders before Deadpool 2. Had never seen it before, and you know, a lot of people I've seen think it looks terrible. There were definitely some jokes in there that I was not a fan of, but overall I just got the feeling of what the heck is this? And I'm not gonna lie, I'm excited, not necessarily to see the movie, but at least learn a little bit more about exactly what they're going on for. It's definitely what I'm going to keep an eye out on going forward. If you haven't seen that trailer, I recommend. You know, it's a little raunchy. It's very raunchy actually, but it has puppets, so you know it's nice. It's fun. You should watch it at least once. It's something else, man. Moving right along, rounding out the top 5, we got Breaking In, Gabrielle Union, bringing in 6.8 million in week 2, dropping a whopping 61.3%. That's a lot. But you know, I don't think the studio really cares because its total domestic gross is already at 29 million, and the reported budget is 6 million. Of course, you gotta usually the guess is you double that to account for the marketing. But regardless, certainly made a good chunk of change for good old Universal, even though the reviews for that have not been the prettiest, to say the least. Couple more things to touch on before we move on. We got Show Dogs coming in at number 6, just out at around 6 million, just below Breaking In, and it actually puts it at the 13th worst debut weekend for a film that opened in over 3,000 theaters. Opened in 3,200 theaters. Let's take a look at this list, shall we? 13 at 6.02 million, finishing just below the Wild Thornberrys movie. Remember that one from 2002? I remember I saw that in theaters. I own the soundtrack to that film. At least my dad bought it at some point. That made 6.01 million back in the day. God, you know, number 1, because I just thought this was such an interesting list. And also Box Office Mojo. Got to remember to cite my sources here. Box Office Mojo is where I'm getting my domestic and worldwide data. So, you know, you could blame me for not double checking everything if some of these are wrong, but blame Box Office Mojo. Hoot, if you remember that, from 2006. I never saw this in theaters. I have seen it though, and I certainly remember seeing ads for it. Opened in 3,018 theaters to a wonderful $3,368,000 opening. Yikes. Yeah, wow. I had no idea that film did so poorly. I just thought that was interesting list to look on. Oh, Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas down there at 18. That movie killed hand-drawn animation for DreamWorks forever, and it makes me sad because Prince of Egypt was so good. All right, and before we leave, I know I'm hanging on. I'm stalling because we only got one wide release film to talk about, so I'm trying to take up time on this this past weekend's box office stuff. We got to look at the per theater average leader, which was the re-release of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which played in 4 theaters this weekend. I wonder where the 4 theaters were. I wonder if it was playing anywhere here. But it averaged $50,690 per theater to a weekend gross of $202,759 in those 4 theaters. That's certainly a film I would love to see on the big screen. If we want to go on the highest, because in the next one is Deadpool 2, if we want to look at the highest not big film, it's going to be First Reformed, which, this is the Ethan Hawke and Amanda Seyfried film. It's Cedric the Entertainer. Hey, look at that. I do remember seeing previews for this. This one brought in. This one was in 4 theaters as well, and it brought in $24,391 per theater. And this one is about a former military chaplain is wrecked with grief over this. Let me start over again. A former military chaplain is wrecked by grief over the death of his son. Mary is a member of his church whose husband, a radical environmentalist, commits suicide, setting the plot in motion. Sounds like a real feel-good film. All right, that will wrap it up for this week's box office, and we will be back after a quick break to take a look at Solo, a Star Wars story, and see how it will do this weekend. So stay around. It'll just be a minute. I'm Garret Neal. This is the Box Office Breakdown, and you're listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. Be right back. I should use that intro more often because it says real good, and I can be like, yeah, movie puns. Am I right, guys? Okay. Yeah, we're here for the second half / second 8 minutes of Box Office Breakdown. I'm still Garret Neal, and let's get into it. But first, I forgot to mention the review scores for last week's new films, Show Dogs, and the book club. So let's take a look at how Show Dogs did. Got a sweet 3.7 on IMDb with a 35 Metascore. Switching over to Rotten Tomatoes, we got a hot 23% on the critic score with an even cooler 25% on that audience rating. Seems like a great movie. So sad I missed out. Moving on to book club, doing a little bit better. Got a 6.3 on IMDb with a 52 Metascore, and on Rotten Tomatoes, 59% critic score, 62% audience. So, seems alright. But let's move on to Solo, a Star Wars story, the new release coming in this weekend from Buena Vista, the final Star Wars film before Episode 9, and who I just... I'm in the camp where it's like, after Episode 9, I really think, Disney should just chill out, okay? I get, this, multiple films a year thing, which I haven't done with Star Wars yet, thank goodness, but for Marvel, has worked well. But they've been doing a great job keeping the quality at least respectable levels, and there were a few dark periods, but they always brought it back. And, maybe they'll bring it back with Episode 9. I'll be like, yeah, more Star Wars, but I just think it's... That shared universe that they got going with Marvel, maybe don't need to do it with Star Wars. I know Star Wars is a huge universe. There's so much to look into, but maybe just space things out a little bit more. We'll see what happens though, because this, despite some problems in production and all the problems that have come up during Solo, still probably going to make a decent amount of money, although probably nothing like what any of the other films have done. Right now, going to Box Office Pro now for these long-range forecasts. We got it set at about 120 million for the 3-day opening weekend, dropping 15% from last week. Now it's got to compete with Deadpool 2 and Infinity War, both of which have gotten great reviews. Star Wars right now, we do have reviews out for it, which is interesting. We haven't had reviews for new films in a while. We got a 65 Metascore, which is honestly right around where usually kind of these big budget superhero action films are. It's obviously not a superhero film, but like the Marvel films, Deadpool, those all get in the 60s, at least the good ones do. The like Star Wars usually do similar. 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. We don't have any fan scores yet, so seems like it's going to be pretty decent. Maybe not mind blowing, but pretty decent. If we want to look at what Rogue One did, Rogue One opened in 4,157 theaters. Solo is projected to open in around 4,200, so pretty similar there. Rogue One opened up to 155 million. This is, of course, in December, so it has that going for it. Plus, again, Solo has not really, I don't think, had a ton of hype going forward, and even though it has gotten pretty decent reviews, it hasn't been anything. I think this one really would have needed reviews to kind of blow it out of the water, really like fantastic reviews in order for people to really get excited for it, because people, after Last Jedi, which I enjoyed, but there was just so much kind of controversy around it, and it was really one of those films where plenty of people who were probably like, yeah, it was decent. There were so many people who it sucked, and so many people who said it was great. And like honestly, that conversation just tired me out. And I'm like, it has tired me out to like I'm kind of done with Star Wars for a little bit. Although of course I already have my tickets to see Solo, so you know, it'll definitely, I think, will do less. I agree with the projections. Obviously, I mean, of course I will, because why would I know better than the people who do this for their job than Rogue One? But I think that's like the best bet as the other like Star Wars story spin-off film that we have. I think that's the best bet to do. I could probably find some other ones, but that was kind of like, I think, the go-to. It'll be interesting to see. Plus, not only is it not a December release, though it is getting closer to summer, so like many schools will be out. Is still gonna have to compete against Deadpool 2 and Infinity War, as I said. So it's gonna be a tough one, but it doesn't have to compete against any other new releases this week, and even next week. I mean, we don't really have much coming up. It's got a few weekends until like the next big film. I guess. Yeah, I mean, Ocean's 8 is the next one in a couple weeks that could compete with it, and Hereditary comes out that week, which you should all be excited for. But that's it. That's why I took so long on the top 5, because we only have that one to talk about, and there's really, it's a Star Wars film. It's a big deal, but you know, it's not gonna. This isn't something like Force Awakens or Last Jedi, where we got to keep an eye out on the record books, see what's going to happen, and who knows? Even by the time we get to Episode 9, it might not be the case. But this is not one that looks like it's going to break any records. And unless it really surprises, it's going to be just kind of a standard-ish box office film. And you know, I can't say I ever thought I'd be saying something about making a standard amount of money when it comes to Star Wars. But here we are. So thank you for joining me this week. Next week we'll talk all about how Solo ended up doing. How's Deadpool 2 doing in week 2? Is Infinity War, how much closer is Infinity War to 2 billion? And we'll take a look at Ocean's 8, Hereditary, and Hotel Artemis. Yeah, that's coming out that week too. Wow. No, that's 2 weeks. Oh yeah, next week we have Action Point, Upgrade, and American Animals, none of which I'm very excited for. But still, come in and check it out, because I'll try and make it fun for you guys. So thanks for watching, or listening, rather. And I'll be back next week. Hopefully you will too. Have a great day, guys. And you're listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection.